All right, guys, we've got ourselves another NFL preview here, and this time we have the Buffalo Bills. We're going to do our normal stuff, go through everything, roster last year, some of the new stuff they've added, some of the stuff they've lost, and all that fun stuff, the schedule, and some picks. But we got ourselves one of the better football teams in the league the last half decade, it feels like, or even longer than that. And again, just like most of the other ones last year, ended in a bit of disappointment. Um, and it's always going to be disappointment when you don't win the Super Bowl. And that's what happens when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the game in Josh Allen. And it ended in a pretty wild game in Denver. Denver did sneak away, but a wild Bills game, one of those wild Josh Allen games we get sometimes. And they went home early, and it came with a bit of change. Sean McDermott gone. Joe Brady was promoted from offensive coordinator up to coach. They get in a new defensive coordinator as well, Mr. Leonard. Inexplicably, Mr. Bean was promoted. That was someone I was hoping would get removed from this team. Didn't quite happen that way. He somehow got himself a promotion, which isn't ideal. Moving on from Sean McDermott and promoting Joe Brady and promoting Bean doesn't really change much. I think a lot, pretty much everything that's there and that's problematic is still there and is still going to be problematic. So I thought that they didn't really go for change. I thought they just stayed the same, found a scapegoat in Mr. McDermott, who I thought should have been let go a while ago. Him getting let go last year was a bit unfortunate, but, you know, he should have been gone a long time ago, in my opinion. But again, the regime doesn't really change here, which is kind of the annoying thing. The expectations are still going to be there. You still got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and when you do have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, your expectations are Super Bowl or bust. So another playoff exit after winning 12 games, not winning the division, is a negative year, and there aren't too many teams who can really say that, but that's how it is. And the Bills are going to have to try some different stuff, and I'm not super sure that they did or will. So, we'll see how it is. Again, last year's stuff was pretty good, metrically, offensively for sure. Second in rush offense, fourth in pass offense, third in total offensive EPA. The defense was a problem. Eighth in pass defense, and really only eighth in pass defense because they were 31st in rush defense. And outside the New York Giants, who were one of the worst rush defense as ever, the Bills were pretty much right there, and you could kind of kill the Bills on the ground a little bit. 13th in total defensive EPA against. And again, when you're that bad against the rush, teams can run whatever offense they want and pretty much gain anything they want in any facet of the game there. So it's not good. It's not ideal, but hopefully this year we go into it and it's a little bit better. Again, a new defensive coordinator, we'll see. They do lose some key players along the way. Joey Bosa, who was pretty important last year, is gone. David Edwards at guard is going to be a miss, in my opinion. Teron Johnson at corner. Ryan Vandermark at tackle. Cameron Lewis, corner. Savage, or Darnell Savage at safety. Matt Milano. AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones, some of these guys who have been around a long time. And again, you're due for a reset, but also for some of the stuff you bought in. Are these guys just kind of gone? Again, key additions here. DJ Moore, we'll talk about. CJ Gardner-Johnson at safety. D. Alford at corner, who hasn't really played particularly well in a while. Not exactly an influx of talent. And then draft, they didn't have a first-round pick. Couple seconds here. TJ Parker on defensive end. Davinson Igbinison at corner. Jude Bowery, tackle. Skylar Bell, wide receiver. Caleb Alarms Orr at linebacker. Jalen Kilgore at safety. Zane Durant at defensive tackle. Toriano Pride Jr. at corner. Tommy Dillman, a new punter. And then Armaj Reed Adams at guard. So they did bring in quite a few players from the draft. just no real, again, no first round picks, so no elite blue chippers or anything, but hopefully some of these guys can, be useful along the way. And we can go ahead and jump into the roster and see what that looks like. And we always start with quarterback, and quarterback here is Josh Allen. And depending on where you view Patrick Mahomes right now, if you took Patrick Mahomes out of the equation, whether you think he's himself or not, Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the league as of this moment. With the other 31, he's an incredible player. And I think his reputation's a bit funky because of the turnover stuff, but I mean, he does have his moments. Again, he had that fumble in the Denver game that was just like, what on earth type of moment. But his offensive output is still so good, even with that stuff, that he laps most of the field a lot of the time, even with those turnovers. So I think because he has them, there's this like kind of a negative view on him. But again, depending on where you are with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's the best quarterback otherwise. The arm talent's there. He can throw. The rushing stuff is probably the best in the league. First in QB rush TDs last year, first in QB scramble yards last year. He's such a weapon in the red zone because of it. Their red zone efficiency is one of the best in the league. And when you have a quarterback who can do the things that Josh Allen does, it's super difficult to handle the red zone. He can pick up yards with his feet. He can pick up yards, through the air. They can do dump offs. They can throw deep. The playbook is open in the red zone, just a little bit extra because of his feet. So again, one of the better rushing quarterbacks, if not the best rushing quarterback. So again, fantastic quarterback. There's not much to say. He's pretty consensus top 2-3 from most people, and he's, again, depending on where you put Mahomes, top 1. My biggest issue with Josh Allen isn't even Josh Allen related. It's play call related. It's personnel related. Last couple of years, we're not looking at a ton of good pass catchers. Kincaid, Shakir, really zero on the outside. It gives defenses good positions and good spots to kind of like attack this offense, which because of the way it plays, because it's a little bit shorter and because it's a little bit more run heavy, you can blitz a little bit more without kind of repercussion. Again, the blitz rate on third down is the highest it's been in the last 6 years, up to 39%, because there's no downfield threat. And when there's no downfield threat, when nobody's getting open down the field, all you have to do is bracket Shakir and blitz. And, you're looking at some pretty easy sacks or, easy throwaways, whatever. Some of those really deep interceptions that, you see quarterbacks make on third and long where they kind of just throw it up there. Stuff like that. And it all happens because, of just not having a deep threat. And we'll see what happens with that coming forward with DJ Moore. I also really dislike that, again, it's a little bit shorter. Air yards per dropback continues to shrink with this football team. Led the league in first down run rate last year at 61%. The most annoying thing about this football team is the fact that they do have a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league, and they just want to run the football more. And it's annoying, and it's not like running is a problem, and it's not like James Cook is a bad back, because I think he's a really great back, and I think the run game is really good and all that fun stuff. But you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and you purposely turn him into someone who's going to have to kind of dink and dunk his way down the field. And I don't understand that at all. You want Josh Allen throwing down the field. You want Josh Allen throwing middle. You want Josh Allen in positions where there's space. You want all that stuff. And it seems to me that the way the offense is run makes it a little bit more difficult to kind of get the good out of Josh Allen, and it puts them more in a position where things have to be perfect down to down. And again, this offense is really efficient because the run game is good, and Josh Allen's not going to miss a ton of short throws all the time. But there's also tons of room to improve when you have the best quarterback in the league and you're not really using them, like outside of like 15% of downs, man. Again, 61% of first downs are runs. That's You have a quarterback who's got good legs, you've got good play calling, you have the threat of a really good run or a really good run game. Surely we could be a little bit better with that, but that's my biggest gripe with the team in general, because it puts a quarterback who's got his, remember we talked about it, he's got his what the fuck moments, like what are you doing moments, and you put a quarterback like that who's elite everywhere else, and you're like taking his flaw where he has these what the fuck moments, and you're almost creating an offense where he can't have them. And again, all his stuff is so good that it's like past that. We're past that in a sense that like his offense is so good it overcomes all the weird turnover stuff by a ton, and it's almost non-noticeable in terms of winning and losing football games. But you take that and you take excuse me, you take his worst trait and you magnify it. If he messes up, now the drive's dead, and he can't get away with anything. There's no maneuverability in his flaws, which I think is just a stupid way to run an offense. But again, we're probably getting too much into scheme stuff. We can probably skip the scheme stuff at the end of the offensive roster bit, but I genuinely dislike some of the way this offense is dealt with when you have a quarterback of this talent. For the backups, Kyle Allen's now the backup. Mitch Trubisky's gone, which could be a bit of an issue. Kyle Allen's not good, and Mitch Trubisky's like, at least in like the play style mold of Josh Allen. Not saying he's like in that realm or anything, but he could come in and win a couple games, and you don't really have to change the offense a whole ton. Kyle Allen's a little bit different and just a little bit worse. So should Josh Allen miss a game or two, which is very much on the table, I'm not sure I trust Kyle Allen as much as I did with Mitch Trubisky, but we'll see. Shane Bukele, I believe, the third quarterback there. If we're down to the third quarterback, there are some serious issues. As for the wide receiver group, interesting here. They bring in DJ Moore. What we spoke about with A.J. Brown, I feel that we can speak about with DJ Moore. Now, A.J. Brown's a better player than DJ Moore. I'm talking more of like DJ Moore had some give-up stuff last year, and if you watch some Eagles stuff, there was some give-up stuff with A.J. Brown, and if I'm going to bypass that with A.J. Brown and say, hey, he just kind of wanted out of there, he wasn't really, he wasn't in it, his heart wasn't in it, and he kind of just wanted to go. If I wanted to do that with A.J. Brown, I kind of have to do it with DJ Moore, who struck me the same as someone who didn't really want to be there and someone who wanted to be somewhere else. And there were definitely some give up routes for sure. Hopefully being in Buffalo, being here with this offense and seeing that they need a guy rejuvenates him a little bit, because the talent's certainly there. He's been a good receiver in this league for a long time. Kid's getting a little bit older, but the talent's still there. And again, I'm not exactly expecting a top 15 type of wide receiver out of DJ Moore, but he can certainly be a lot better than he was last year. Khalil Shakir, good player out of the slot. Josh Palmer, he just seems like a guy who is just like a one-hit kind of guy over in LA, and this is kind of he's just not super great. Keon Coleman, it's never really gotten there yet. We'll see if, there's still time for him. Skylar Bell, rookie. We'll see what he can add. Mecole Hardman, a vet. Tyrell Shavers, I'm not sure I don't think he's got a really, a timeline that gets him back this year, but he was getting snaps and stuff late in the season, and it's unfortunate that he got the injury he got. And I think he played the first half. Like, he played like 20 or 25 snaps with that injury. I think it was a torn ACL. Played like 20 to 25 snaps with that injury in the playoff game. So, as someone they might miss a little bit and someone to look out for the future. Trent Sherfield, Jalen Virgil further down the line. If DJ Moore can kind of get back into that lower end 1 range, then, we might get some good stuff here. Again, Shakir's, talented. We're going to talk about the running backs and, the tight ends in a little bit. But if you can kind of maneuver a way into a decent 1-2 and kind of figure everything else out along the way, maybe. But again, if DJ Moore is who he was last year, then this group, again, is just not going to be good. There's just not a ton of talent in this wide receiver room outside of DJ Moore's talent from 2 years ago and slot receiver that you can kind of probably replace with a lot of other players in the league. So not in love with the room, but potential for it to be a little bit better should DJ Moore care this year. Running back, James Cook is someone I really like. I think he had a huge year last year. I think he could have a huge year this year. I'm not sure if the offense, again, we've been talking about how often they run the football. I'm not sure that's going to change. I think he's going to catch a little bit more out of the backfield. I think we're going to get a ton of James Cook this year. Just hope he stays healthy because this is a really, really good back. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, depth, but not like depth you want out there on like 30% of snaps or anything like that. So you're probably going to get a lot of James Cook again. Frank Gore further down the line there. So it's a really fantastic back. If James Cook were to get hurt, then you're probably looking for somebody on the waiver wire to kind of pick up and bring in and take a majority of the snaps away from Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, who can, do a job here and there. But extended snaps in a row, probably not where you want them. Tight end, Dalton Kincaid is a weapon, man. Big fella, like him. He's got to be healthy. You hope he's healthy. But a really solid player, a really good weapon. Someone I think has a decent year here. And hopefully he can kind of bring that forward. He's been pretty good his whole career and, again, talented. Big weapon there. Dawson Knox at backup is still here. I expect this to run its course at some stage. He can do a job, but, not of Kincaid's, height. Jackson Hawes was pretty decent last year, so hopefully he can just kind of keep on pushing, maybe take Dawson Knox's position as, we go along here, and if he's good enough, kind of just like when Dawson Knox goes, you got to get like a ready replacement there, which is great. Shane Zylstra further down the list there. So this is a pretty good tight end room. Again, there are, you kind of want Kincaid out there most of the time for the way the offense runs. But you can sprinkle in the other guys a decent amount and still get good play. So a really decent room. Offensive line. This is an interesting group. A lot of the metric stuff is a little bit all over the place when you look at the Bills' offensive line, and a lot of that comes from, talent. A lot of that comes from Josh Allen's ability to kind of escape those situations and stuff, because when you really look at it, when you look at the whole thing as a system, you're like, there aren't a ton of sacks here, and little things like that. They're kind of winning at the line of scrimmage a lot. And then some of the other metrics are like, man, they're, some of these guys, when they get beat, get torched, when, things like that. It's a weird mixture of some really good metrics, some really bad metrics, and you kind of have to find the middle. There is talent here. Again, Deion Dawkins, a really solid player, continues to anchor this line. He is getting a little bit older, so we'll see if that comes with a dip at any stage. But again, last year he was number 1 in pass block win rate, just in general, across the NFL for tackles, which is pretty fantastic. So Again, as he gets older, we'll see. But for now, continues to be really, really good out there. Alec Anderson at guard, not a ton of snaps for him. There was some really bad pass block grades in there and some really fantastic run block grades in there. So hopefully he can kind of just build on the run block stuff and bring the pass game up a little bit. Really small samples, so there's not really much to go on there. But from what he had, it was all right. Connor McGovern, above average center for sure. He's pretty good in both aspects of the game, which is good. Currently dealing with an injury that should keep him out a little bit. So we might get a couple of games here with Lloyd Cushenberry at center. Hasn't played particularly well, but, a vet, a backup who's done this for a pretty long time, has had a lot of starter minutes there, starter snaps. So, there aren't too many other players you're looking for to kind of back up your center. And for a couple weeks, Lloyd's a pretty decent one for what it is. And again, he hasn't played particularly well, but a vet who can come in and play 2 or 3 games if you need him to, and probably won't mess up too much. The other guard spot, O'Cyrus Torrence, it just really hasn't clicked super well for him in the NFL yet. He's still very young. Perhaps he does take that step, but at some stage, if he just continues to play like he's been playing, you're probably just going to look somewhere else. So hopefully he can take a step here. Spencer Brown on the other side was really good. Again, 22nd in PFF's offensive line rankings. Top 10 in pass block win rate was good. All that stuff's fantastic. The run stuff is fantastic. The pass block stuff, again, top 10 in pass block win rate, but we talked about those guys who, the grading wasn't good because when he gets torched, he gets torched. And, it happens a little bit. And a lot of the time, again, a good chunk of the time, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's all really, really fantastic. There's that 5% where it's miss quite a bit there. So, again, you're going to get some really, really good snaps. The tackles are good. When McGovern comes back, the center is good. The guard positions are, a little bit up in the air, but should be decent offensive line, particularly with Josh Allen behind it. Depth here is all right. Corbett, Grable, they're all right. They can do a job in short stints. They did last year. You don't want them out there for you don't know if you want them out there for long periods because they're one, the backup coaches are seeing them all the time, and 2, their sample size is quite small. Jude Bowery, the rookie, joins the group. We'll see if he can be useful if he needs to. Depth's okay, but early on in the season, we might just have a little bit of a problematic middle with Lloyd in there instead of McGovern. So not ideal in that aspect, but again, once he comes back, this should be a pretty good offensive line. So that's the whole offense. Again, I don't need to sum it up too much. I think a lot of what happens on this offense comes down to how good DJ Moore is this year and the play calling. And again, the type of play calling, not necessarily the play calling in terms of, good plays versus bad plays. I'm talking sequencing and just letting the quarterback, the best quarterback in the league, throw the football more and have the ball in his hands more. So they're going to play a lot of tough teams, which we'll get to with the schedule. We're going to find out in some of these games, probably right off the bat in that Texans game, how stubborn the offensive play calling is going to be. So we'll see there. Defense. Again, this team loses Sean McDermott, who was doing a lot of the defensive work, defensive coach. Jim Leonard comes over from Denver. So we'll see how he implements the system he wants to run. But it was, again, a really bad year for the unit last year. The run defense was truly horrid. And hopefully they do something about it this year in terms of mitigating that. But we'll see. So we'll start off with the defensive line here. There's a really fantastic player here. Ed Oliver is a really good football player. He started really well last year again. Then ended up missing a large chunk of the year with his injury. I think it was a pec. The talent's there. The performances are coming together week after week, a really fantastic player. That being said, the injury he's dealing with in camp, I don't know if it, like, they're not being super specific about it. I don't know if it's a layover from what he's been doing or what he was dealing with over his injury break, or if it's something new, whatever it may be. They're not clarifying anything. He's missing practices. Joe Brady was like, his injury designation will be set at the beginning of the season. All of that is a gigantic red flag as to what's happening with Ed Oliver, and I don't particularly feel great about it. And I don't feel great about it because there's only one other good player on this defensive line, and if Ed Oliver were to miss, I don't know how they're going to stop anything on the ground whatsoever. So it's a pretty significant problem right now. Again, he's a very, very good player. He needs to be healthy. Deion Walker last year in there wasn't very good last year. Okay, pass rush. Again, the run stuff, just like the rest of the team, pretty much a gigantic issue. Dwayne Carter, kind of a depth piece. Hasn't played in a while, and last time he did play, it wasn't very good. Zane Durant's a rookie. We'll see if he can contribute a little bit. TJ Sanders was just bad last year, and I know he's a younger guy and decent draft pedigree, so we're kind of looking at hoping that he takes a little bit of a step. Needs to take a positive step, but not ideal last year, and hopefully it just gets better this year. Landon Jackson, Travis Clayton, there's like 30 combined snaps between the two of them, so we'll see. Edge, again, there's a talented piece here. Greg Rousseau is a really good edge guy. He can do a lot of both. The pass rushing stuff is pretty good. The run stuff, the edge setting stuff is all excellent. So Greg Rousseau is a really good player, continues to put in really good performances, needs to continue to put in good performances, particularly if Oliver is going to miss time, because it's kind of just him and a couple of other bodies out there. So a really good player. Hopefully he can play next to another really good player there. On the other side, they bring in Bradley Chubb. It was pretty bad last year, just in general, ranked 75th in pass rush grade on PFF, which is not good. They need help on this defensive line, and he's going to have to put in some good performances again. He's a talented player. It just hasn't really been that way in a little bit, so he needs to be useful. Depth, TJ Parker, rookie. We'll see what he can do. He can be a useful rotational piece. Michael Holt, average depth. Dana has been around a while, but hasn't played particularly well at any stage. So it's not a good unit outside of the two really fantastic players in it. And one of them's hurt. So again, if Ed Oliver's hurt and not healthy and not playing games, you worry that the run defense stuff is just going to be as bad as it was last year. Linebacker, another unit. Well, not another unit. This is a bad unit just in general. I haven't said that about any of the units. There are like not so good portions, but this is just like kind of bad unit. Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, both starters here. None of these players are particularly good at much of anything. Both ranked 60th and 73rd, respectively, on PFF for linebackers last year. Both were really, really bad in coverage. Dorian Williams is pretty good getting downhill, can be useful in that department. Blitzing, run defense can be okay in that aspect. But again, a hole in the defense and coverage here. And again, it's just not a ton going on there. They've both been around a long time. I'm not even sure if there's like room for growth with these two. Both been there 3 years. One of them's been there 4. It's just not a whole lot going on there. Keontae Jenkins is here. Hasn't really played a ton of snaps recently. We'll see. Middle round rookie Caleb Alarms, or we'll see if he can do something, get some snaps. It's a bad group, and you're kind of just hoping that somebody gets a hot hand along the way and kind of puts you in a position where you can get some above average play somewhere from someone for just a little bit, but not holding my breath there. Secondary, another unit similar to the defensive line where there's really not a lot going on except, Christian Benford is a good player in my head at least. He didn't play well last year. Just in general, he was okay. Nothing special. He needs to kind of take that step back. Take that step back forward from what he was 2 years ago. Because again, he plays well in some good stretches, but again, 2 years ago he was really good. Last year was a little bit of a step back. He just didn't play particularly well, so he needs to play better. Maxwell Hairston, younger player, pretty decent in coverage sometimes, really struggles in the run defense stuff. Didn't play a ton of snaps, so we'll see if he can kind of just build on that. Not, I'm not, we're just hoping he does. I'm not going to guess either way, because that's not exactly what I do, but we're hoping he can kind of step up and perhaps take a step there. And then you might have two pretty decent pieces there. We'll see. D. Alford gets bought in. He's had two pretty bad years in a row now, and it's just not getting there at the moment. He was really bad last year. He needs to figure it out. Safety room. CJ Gardner-Johnson comes in. He's a strange old guy, but someone who is capable of putting in a decent shift once in a while. He hasn't played super well in spurts. Like, he goes, like, over the years he's had like good years and bad years, and like it's very much not consistent year to year, so we're hoping to kind of get good play out of him this year. He is dealing with a bit of a calf thing, but that shouldn't keep him out too long. Cole Bishop was solid last year in a couple spurts, which is nice. Hopefully he can kind of keep going in that mold. Depth, not ideal here. Damar Hamlin, frankly, isn't very good. Geno Stone was one of the worst safeties in the league last year who comes in here. Any problems up top, again, GJ is going through a bit of a calf thing, and you're kind of having to start some of these other guys. And God forbid, like, at any stage you have to do Damar Hamlin and Geno Stone at the same time. It is not good. There's just a very bad bit of depth here, so not ideal. Depth at corner, also a bit of an issue here. Undrafted rookie Connie Walker, Jordan Hancock, who's kind of like a converted safety. You do have second round pick Davison Igbinison, I believe is how you say it. Second round pick at corner. We'll see if he can step in and cause problems. I heard he was, pushing Hairston in camp, which is, I don't know if that's like a good thing or a bad thing for the guy whose place he's taking, or a good thing for him at least. Either way, he seems like he's doing all right there in camp, so we'll see if he can be useful in his snaps. But again, the depth here, in general, it's just not super great, but the depth here is really bad, and you cannot really afford to take injuries on a team that's like not ideal. So it's not a good defense. I'm not expecting a ton out of it. Again, I think there are three like good players on this defense: Benford, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau. Ed Oliver is dealing with an injury, a red flaggy type of injury, and Benford really didn't play super well last year. So somebody somewhere has got to step up on this defense. Somebody's got to do something. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same position we were last year. It is a new coordinator, so we'll see what the scheme looks like. But at some stage, it doesn't matter what scheme he's kind of running. You're probably just going to get run over in the run game again. So need Ed Oliver to be healthy. Need Benford to step up. Need Greg Rousseau to continue to play. And you probably need another guy or two to kind of just really step up and kind of keep this and see if you can put this defense in like the average realm. We'll see. I'm not like over the moon about that. As for the schedule, there are some, it's not easy. This one's not easy. It's a little bit difficult. There's a really difficult just run at the back end of this. There's a really difficult run at the front end of this. You start at Houston, which is really not easy. Houston have a habit of doing well against Buffalo. Detroit at home, LA at home, New England at home, before you travel to the Rams there. So that's a tough 5-game opener. And, 3 of them are at home. and you hope to win some of those, but those two road games are really difficult. New England are, again, won the division over you last year. Detroit, high-powered offense. Los Angeles hoping to take a step this year. That is a tough, tough stretch to start. And then after that, you go to Las Vegas. You're probably out there on the West Coast for 2 weeks. After you go to LA, to Las Vegas, you're probably just sticking out there before your bye week. And then out of your bye, you get Baltimore at home, which will be tough. At Minnesota, which will be tough. And then, at the Jets, Miami at home. And then another one of those tough stretches where you're Kansas City at home, New England on the road, Green Bay on the road, Chicago at home, and then Denver on the road before you end with, at Miami versus the Jets. So there are some tough, tough, tough games here, and a ton of these are in prime time. And when you're on the road in prime time in particular, that's not fun. You do the Thursday, you go at Houston, and then a short week, you're opening your stadium at home to Detroit. Prime time at the Rams, prime time at Minnesota, prime time. Kansas City at home, prime time. And then you have at Green Bay and Chicago at home in prime time. So a couple roadies there in prime time against some tough teams. All these primetime games are really good. But it's a difficult schedule. It's a tough one. So we had some, I don't want to play any over-under stuff in terms of schedule when it comes to Buffalo. I'm not, again, the schedule is really difficult. I don't want to play like over 10.5 wins. It probably is 9.5, 10.5. Not interested in that. Don't want any division because I think they're kind of on par with New England, and while they also have a tough schedule, you have a tough schedule. Don't want any of that stuff. The future stuff is a bit underpriced or overpriced, conference, that sort of stuff, Super Bowl. So we did a couple props here. One for the quarterback, Josh Allen, over 499.5 rush yards, minus 110. That is a $7.17 bet for us in our challenge. I like Josh Allen rush yards when he's playing good teams. When they need to score points, he's using his legs in big games. And there are big games on this schedule. Again, the first 5 at Houston, Detroit at home, you're going to need to score points. Chargers going to be tough defensively through the air and the coverage. New England, you're going to need to score points. Rams, you're going to need to score points. Baltimore, score points. You got Kansas City there, New England, Green Bay, Chicago, score points. Denver are going to be tough. For the offense to keep up a lot of these games with the defense the way it is, you're going to need to score points. And again, when Josh Allen gets into those types of games, he uses his legs, man. They use his legs quite a bit, and I know there's this whole thing about him, whatever, just trying to not use his legs and try and keep him healthy. Good luck, I suppose. But again, against Denver in the playoff game, 66 yards on the ground. Against New England, 53 yards on the ground. Against Cincinnati in that up and down game, 78 yards on the ground. New England again, 48 yards on the ground. There are a lot of games here with a lot of yards on the ground. New Orleans, 45. Atlanta, 42. And not only does he get the rushes, because, again, last year he rushed 112 times, but he gets a good chunk. He's really difficult to bring down. He's quick, so when he does get into space, he eats up chunks. And we're talking about, again, 500 yards for the season. That's 29.4, assuming he plays all 17, 29.4 yards per game. And you can see there are some games where he doesn't need to do much. Again, like, when they blow out teams like Carolina, you rush for 7, he doesn't need to do anything. But they're going to be in a lot of games this year. And I'm not sure how many teams they're blowing out. I'm not sure how many teams are blowing them out. They're going to be in games, which means I think he'll be using his feet. And we also have one more thing here. James Cook to lead all running backs in fantasy points at plus 1743. That's a $2.71 bet for us in our challenge. I like James Cook, man. And James Cook, I kind of like James Cook's stuff is already priced into like the market. His over-under is really high. He had a really fantastic year last year. Again, rushed for 1621. And when you bet a player to kind of go over when his numbers are so high, you need like perfect all year, and I would prefer we just played the up case. It's going to be tough again. Christian McCaffrey gets a lot of volume. Bijan gets 17-1. You know, Bijan's going to get a ton of volume. Gibbs is going to get a ton of volume. But I think he could rush for the same he did last year. He rushed for 1,600. There's a world where he can rush for just as much, or if not more. But I think he'll be a little bit more involved in the receiving game as well this year. He only had 33 catches last year. I think there could be more, and I think he was in that realm last year. So James Cook to have a really good year, a really big year in terms of output, and we'll take, instead of kind of just betting his over-unders that are really high, we'll take a shot at him being the most productive in the fantasy community there. So those are our plays. Those are the Buffalo Bills. Really interested to see what this team looks like. I hope they're really good. I hope I hope they're really good, because there are so many primetime games with them involved against really good football teams, and those should be tons of fun. But Buffalo Bills, another year of high expectations. Let's see what they got.